Let's move on. Big news out of college football last week as it was dropped that OU and Texas have entered into an agreement to exit the Big 12 for the 2024 season, and they will be members of the SEC. The first reaction that I had was, man, 2023 is going to feel weird because it's going to literally feel like, and I guess, forgive me, today is just the day of baseball analogies. It's the on deck year. It's all we're going to be talking about is what this looks like moving forward, what 2024 looks like, what these conferences are going to look like, what the expanded playoff is going to look like, what it's going to feel like, how is this going to happen? And 2023 is going to be like this, wah, wah, and we still have the subjective 4-team invitational and the conferences that we currently have. It's going to be a fascinating year because of that. There's no doubt. Obviously, there is big changes to the Big 12 as they're adding those new teams, some of those new teams before OU and Texas leave. We'll still have a relationship and do some of those games, so that's going to be interesting. The huge shift then comes in 2024, and I can't wait for it. I really can't. I think that these are changes that in many ways were inevitable. I've talked about that. At many times, in particular when the news about USC and UCLA came out and their move to the Big Ten. These major brands that were, and forgive me for the language, but stuck in the conferences that they were stuck in, getting shares that were going to be significantly lower than peers that were in the Big Ten and the SEC. They really didn't have a choice. Now, you can hate it. I understand that. And a lot of traditionalists do hate it. I understand that. I totally get it. But in reality and in economic reality, these schools didn't really have a choice. And it made way too much sense for everyone involved. So they're going to move, and we're going to get tectonic shifts in college football in 2024. We're going to have an expanded playoff. We're going to have these brand new conferences. I can't wait to see how it plays out. And to be honest, I don't really know how it's going to play out. I will tell you this. I can't wait to see how the expanded playoff helps the conferences that aren't the SEC and the Big Ten. And I do think that it will, because the language that we've been told is going to be used is that the 6 best champions from the sport are going to go to the postseason. Well, that's good news if you're in the future Pac-10, whatever they're going to call it, if you're in the Big 12, if you're in the ACC, because those conferences become, at least for the teams that are in the middle of the conferences now and having a hard time kind of clambering up and playing with some of the big boys, become more winnable. So where does that leave us in 2024? Where does that leave OU and Texas in 2024? A lot of people have asked me, like, well, what do you think their chances are in the SEC? You know, there's part of me that believes like they're going to go in and be just fine. And then I start to think to myself, no, hold on. Alabama and Georgia have so far outpaced really everybody but maybe Ohio State in terms of recruiting that it's going to be really difficult. Now, this recruiting cycle went very well for both Texas and Oklahoma. And I thought that Steve Sarkisian and Brent Venables did a really good job in this recruiting cycle. But they're going to have to do that 2, 3, 4 years in a row in order to have a roster that can compete with both Georgia and Alabama. Now, the difference is that I don't think it's going to be as important to win the conference moving forward in the expanded playoff as it is now, currently, or at least competing for the conference title, right? So I think that the 3rd and 4th best team in both the Big Ten and the SEC is almost assured to go to the college football playoff in many cases. Basically, what I feel like is going to happen is that the 6 spots after the 6 best champions are basically going to be SEC and Big Ten teams. Maybe a few more SEC teams than Big Ten teams, but on average, I think you're going to have about 3.5, 4 Big Ten teams, and you're going to have about, 3.5, 4, 4.5 on average SEC teams. And because of that, OU and Texas, maybe they don't have to go in there and win the conference right away. Do I think they will eventually? Probably, especially Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma is a proud program that they owned the Big 12. They win conference championships. They're recruiting at a high level. They probably will at some point. I just don't know if they're going to do it right away. But I don't know if it matters, and I don't think that it does. Because, again, when we get into the expanded playoff, we've got these 6 spots for champions across college football, 2 of which will be the Big Ten and the SEC champion. Then you got 4 other champions, and now you've got 6 spots. Those are basically going to go to the Big Ten and the SEC, at least in my estimation. So that's what I think it's going to happen. That's how I think it's going to play out. And because of that, I think OU and Texas could be, in particular if they capitalize on the recruiting that they had in this cycle for 2023, they could be in good shape.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.